let's be honest, probably the single biggest fear when you're thinking about bankruptcy is about your money, right? Will I lose every single dollar I earn? Today, we're going to break down the Canadian system that's designed to answer that exact question. It's called surplus income, and it's a process that's really meant to be fair, not to punish you as you work your way towards a fresh start. So let's start with a number, 137,295. That's how many Canadians filed for consumer insolvency just in 2024. Every single one of those filings is a person, a family, trying to navigate a really complex and, frankly, stressful process. And for pretty much all of them, the same questions come up. And these are the big ones, aren't they? Do you have to give up your entire paycheck? I mean, how are you even supposed to live? Well, the short answer is no. You absolutely do not lose everything. The system has a very specific, very calculated approach. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack right now. So here's our roadmap for today. We'll kick things off with the big picture of income in bankruptcy. Then we'll define what surplus income actually is. After that, we'll walk through the step-by-step calculation, look at how it adjusts for real-life situations, and we'll wrap up with the real purpose behind this whole system. Okay, first up, your income in bankruptcy. It's so important to see this not as a punishment, but really as a structured framework. It's designed to help you get that fresh start you need. And this right here, this is the core idea behind everything. It's a balancing act. On one side of the scale, you have the need to make sure you have enough money to live with dignity. And on the other side, you have the obligation to be fair to the people you owe money to. This idea of balance is what the whole process is built on. All right, so to really get how surplus income is calculated, we have to start with the official definitions. And these aren't just casual terms, they come straight from Canada's Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act, and the words have very, very specific meanings. First, let's look at total income. The Act defines this incredibly broadly. It's not just your salary from your job. It's pretty much any revenue you get while you're in bankruptcy. Could even be a settlement for wrongful dismissal. But, and this is important, it specifically does not include things like gifts or an inheritance. And here it is, the key phrase, surplus income. Just listen to the wording here from the Act. It's the part that exceeds what's necessary for a reasonable standard of living. So this isn't about taking the money you need to live. It's about sharing a part of what's left over after your basic needs are covered. Now this is a huge point of confusion for so many people, so let's clear it up. A budget surplus is what you talk about in personal finance, right? It's when you have more money coming in than going out. But surplus income, that's a specific legal term in bankruptcy. It has nothing to do with your personal budget. It's a formal calculation based on government rules. They are not the same thing. Okay, now for the main event. How is your contribution actually calculated? Well, it's not a mystery. The whole thing follows 4 very clear steps. These are the 4 steps a licensed insolvency trustee follows every single time. First, they figure out your family size. Second, they calculate your household's available income. Third, they compare that income to a set government standard. And finally, they figure out what your required payment is. Let's walk through each one. Step 1. Define the family unit. This is the starting block for everything. The official rule is pretty clear. It's about who lives in your house and shares finances, whether they're bringing in income or just part of the expenses. That number, the size of your family unit, sets the baseline for the whole calculation. Step 2 is figuring out your available monthly income. The easiest way to think about it is like a funnel. You pour the whole family's total monthly income into the top. Then, the first things that get filtered out are mandatory deductions. Taxes, CPP, EI. After that, another filter takes out a specific list of other necessary costs. And here's that specific list of what gets filtered out. These are called non-discretionary expenses. The government directive lets you deduct costs like child support, spousal support, big medical expenses, or childcare. These are seen as essential payments, so they get subtracted before anyone even looks at your surplus income. So that brings us to step 3. Once you have your family's available monthly income, you compare it to this table. These are the superintendent's standards. The government updates these numbers every year, and they basically represent the official threshold for what's considered a reasonable standard of living based on how many people are in your family. And now we get to the final calculation, the actual formula. It's actually pretty straightforward. If your household's available income is less than $200 over that standard we just saw, you pay nothing. Simple.
But if it's more than $200 over, you are required to pay 50%, exactly half of the amount that is above the standard. That is the core formula.
But, life isn't a simple formula, is it? So the system has some adjustments built right in for different family situations and for the fact that, hey, income isn't always stable. Okay, let's look at a super common scenario. What if you aren't the only one in the house earning an income? This official example shows a family where the person in bankruptcy earns about 74% of the total available income. Because of that, they're only responsible for their share, 74%, of the total surplus. So their final payment is half of their portion. The system makes it proportional, which is just way more fair. So what happens if your income isn't stable? I mean, whose is, right? In this example, the person's income shoots way up in the 5th month. Now, instead of basing the payment on that one really high month, the trustee averages the income over the whole period. This smooths out the peaks and the valleys and leads to that much fairer average payment you see at the bottom. So, after all those steps, all those definitions and calculations, let's just zoom out for a second and look at the big picture. What is the ultimate goal here? What's the point of this whole process? Well, the official government directive actually spells out the purpose right here. The keywords are equitably and consistently. The whole goal is to have a standardized system that treats everybody fairly, that removes the guesswork, and makes sure the process is predictable for everyone involved. And that kind of leaves us with this one last thought. The surplus income system, it's a very detailed, formula-based answer to a very human problem. It's trying to find that perfect balance between debt, dignity, and the promise of a fresh start. And the question for all of us is, does a standardized approach like this actually get that balance right? Thanks for tuning in.